Welcome everybody. My name is Ron Tucker. You entered my domain. This is my show. It's called at Ron's Talking. I appreciate anybody who's decided to take the time out of their busy schedule to just take a listen and look see at what I'm bringing to the table. My main purpose is to bring the truth, bring some honesty and integrity to the game of not just politics, but the things that are occurring in our life in general. Now, most of my videos that I put out, my main focus and emphasis has been on dealing with this Trump regime that is coming back to our country in the form of a presidency. And it's very, very disheartening that he won somehow. I still have my reservations about how he got back in office with the voting. Not trying to start a conspiracy theory. I don't subscribe to that unless I have proof positive, and right now I don't have it. So I'm not going to be like the other side, like President-elect Trump, who cried and complained that he lost the last election because it was rigged. Had no proof, couldn't prove it. We know the rest of that story. All of a sudden, since he got reelected, ain't heard no crying and no chirping, no moaning or bitching about, he got robbed. And the election was rigged. Ain't heard a peep since then. But anyway, I just want to say to the people who really don't know me and don't understand or know where I'm coming from, some of them probably could care less. My thing is this. I come from a time and a place when we were raised as young kids and became young adults and became adults. I had a concept, and I don't know about you, but I had a concept of how this world should revolve and operate when it came to my people and other people in this country. We got one planet, we got one country called the United States of America, and all of us are involved in it to some kind of capacity, and we all have a vested interest, but our interests should not be so diverse that it just clouds everybody else's existence who doesn't look like you, and specifically the white people of this country. Not all of them. Uh, I've been receiving a few comments from people who I guess feel like I'm just railing about the plight of Black America. I worry about the plight of America, but if Black people and other minorities or disadvantaged people who are not getting a fair shake, well, you damn right. I'm going to be really talking more specifically about their situation because their situation is more dire than the majority, which are white Americans who have done a lot of things in the past, as far as their history is concerned, that has put so many people in jeopardy, has transformed the lives of so many minorities, people who don't have the same skin color as they, and our history has always bore that out. We have a problem, and we have a persistent and consistent problem in America. And the problems are not only stark, but they are so apparent. But you have two sides. One side that recognizes those issues and want to address them, and want that side on the right to acknowledge that those things do in fact exist. Racism, misogyny, recidivism, homophobia, transphobia, all these different phobias, and all these stupid titles, these slurs and slangs like woke, uh, DEI, CRT, all these little phrases that have become rallying cries just to, I guess, bolster the inherent racism that has always been a part of the fabric of our society. And what really gets me is not that those things exist, is that a lot of us refuse to acknowledge that they are there. And you can't attack or change or improve anything if you're unwilling to admit that they exist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just somebody who sees things for what it is. And I call it like it is. I mean, there are things that we know have been happening, and a lot of things that have been happening in our country are systemic. They've been happening for centuries. And I'm not going to take a lot of time and put a lot of time and effort into jumping on Donald Trump today because he's not the focal point of my discussion or my attention. But I ran across something that was very interesting, and it involves our a piece of our sordid history, and it involves the American Indian, the Native Americans, truly the first and original Americans of this country, of this land. So the settlers, if you will, and our government back in the 1800s, in their quest for this major land grab that they initiated, I looked at and I read President Andrew Jackson's memo or his address to Congress, if you will, and it really illustrated to me, and it was bold and it was stark. In a way, it's laughable based on the sheer arrogance and the brutality that was going on in the 1800s when America decided to just, you know, take over the land of the Indians, the Native Americans, and just displace them because they could, and they did. So I know a lot of people might not know about this because currently, right now, the Republican Party in this so called MAGA movement, those people that support Donald Trump and his ideology, they have been fervently attempting to ban books in the schools, don't want certain things taught because they feel like it will put young white kids at a disadvantage and make them feel ashamed of themselves and their history and all that. May very well be true if those youngsters and some of the older people in this country uh, went back and kind of took a look at some of our history because some of it is sordid, embarrassing, uh, just terrible. So I just want to take a little peek with you and just take you back down memory lane, or for the first time, open your eyes to what America has always been about. Kind of makes me wonder about when was America great, as opposed to what you see on the red hats with the Make America Great Again slogan. I wonder if this time frame that I'm going to refer to is part of that greatness that they keep alluding to. So bear with me. And my buddy up here, Donald the Clown, he put me up to this. So if y'all get upset, y'all need to address all your uh, vitriol and your emails and stuff if they're derogatory or mean-spirited. Don't hit me. He's the guy. He's the one that instigated this. So now you know. Anyway, let me read this. On December 6, 1830, in his annual message to Congress, President Andrew Jackson informed Congress on the progress of the removal of Indian tribes living east of the Mississippi River to land in the West. Now, in the early 1800s, American demand for Indian nations land increased, and momentum grew to force American Indians further west. The first major step to relocate American Indians came when Congress passed and President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act of May 28, 1830. Now let that soak in for a second, folks. The removal of Indians from their own land. And we have the nerve to act like everything's been great in America. Here we go. Because there's more. The act authorized the president to negotiate removal treaties with Indian tribes living east of the Mississippi River, primarily in the states of Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina, and others. And notice all those states down south. The goal was to remove all American Indians living in existing states and territories and send them to unsettled land in the West. So in other words, we're going to just remove all these people from their land, displace them, and send their asses out there in the West where it ain't nothing but dirt and rocks. And desert probably, back in those days, just desolate land. And let them, take their business out there. So we just go ahead and get all this rich, good, fertile soil for our needs as white folks. Now, in his message on December the 6th, 1830, President Jackson informed Congress on the progress of the removal, stating that it gives me pleasure to announce to Congress that the benevolent policy of the government steadily pursued for nearly 30 years in relation to the removal of the Indians beyond the white settlements is approaching to a happy consummation. White folks, this is what y'all about. Back then, this is what y'all were doing. And people wonder why a lot of us today still look at y'all with one eye. Maybe that's where that phrase from the Indians said, white man speaking with fucking tongue. Because they snaked on y'all way back then. And you know, us black people, well, we didn't have much to say about what y'all were doing to them because we were getting things done to us that y'all didn't know about. So anyway, let me continue. President Jackson declared that removal would incalculably strengthen the southwestern frontier, clearing Alabama and Mississippi of their Indian populations, he said, would enable those states to advance rapidly in population, wealth, and power. Remember that old phrase, generational wealth? That's where it started. But they had to remove those Indians, those individuals that who they deemed, I guess, primitive. Jackson declared that by the end of his presidency, his administration would negotiate almost 70 removal treaties. Now, these led to the relocation of nearly 50,000 Eastern Indians to the Indian Territory. They created a space for the Indians called the Indian Territory. They took their whole nation, whole United States as it was back then, and just took those Indians and compartmentalized them and put them in a little plot of land, a little section. Ain't not Section 8, but you get the drift. So that territory, which later became Eastern Oklahoma, it opened up 25 million acres of eastern land to white settlement back in the East. And since the bulk of the land was in the American South, led to the expansion of slavery. Now, let that sink in for a minute. It's part of the whole process. It all started coming together. Perhaps the most well-known treaty, the Treaty of New Ikata, which was ratified in 1836, called for the removal of the Cherokees living in Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama. The treaty was opposed by many members of the Cherokee Nation, and when they refused to leave, a Major General Winfield Scott was ordered to push them out. He was given 3,000 troops and authority to raise additional state militia and volunteer troops to force the removal. We continue. Despite Scott's order calling for the removal of Indians in a humane fashion, this did not happen. Does that surprise anybody? That they were going to do anything humane? Look, the orders will get their asses out and get them out under any kind of circumstances necessary. Okay? Now, during the fall and winter of 1868 through 1839, the Cherokee Indians were forcibly moved from their homes to the Indian Territory, some having to walk as many as 1,000 miles over a 4-month period. Process all this, folks. Think about it while I'm telling you. Approximately 4,000 of the 16,000 Cherokees died along the way. This sad chapter in our history is known as the Trail of Tears. A lot of people have heard about the Trail of Tears, but you probably never knew how it operated and how it happened. This is how it happened, folks. Okay. Can you imagine that, though? Some people can't walk a mile without taking a break or calling it quits. They had these people walking as many as 1,000 miles over a 4-month period. You know what condition those people were in. That's why so many of them died. Because they were being forced to trudge along and getting kicked out of their own land just so the white settlers could absorb and steal more land for their own personal gains. It's America. Make America great again, y'all. By the 1840s, nearly all Indian tribes had been driven west, which is exactly what the Indian Removal Act intended to accomplish. And it did, obviously. Okay, now here's good old Andy Jackson's transcript in his message to Congress. It gives me pleasure to announce to Congress that the benevolent policy of the government, steadily pursued for nearly 30 years in relation to the removal of the Indians beyond the white settlements, is approaching to a happy consummation. 2 important tribes have accepted the provision made for their removal at the last session of Congress, and it is believed that their example will induce the remaining tribes also to seek the same obvious advantages. Now, I can only surmise, here it is in this day and age, as to what this agreement and what the conditions and terms were given to the Indians to go ahead and agree to what the white man wanted them to do. And I'm sure that the advantages that the Indians received Oh, God. Uh, Pretty much they got nothing. What kind of advantages do you derive or get when you've been kicked out of your own home, off your own land, and told to scram? And if you don't scram, we're going to force you out. We're going to run you out. You got to, like you said back at the club days, when the club was closing, you ain't got to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here. That was it. And so the consequences of a speedy removal will be important to the United States, to individual states, and to the Indians themselves. Again, I wonder what Andy Jackson meant by it was going to be an obvious advantage to the Indians to go ahead and get to stepping. It was either that or get to burying some graves for you, because it wasn't too many options there. But I digress. The pecuniary advantages which it promises to the government are the least of its recommendations. It puts an end to all possible danger of collision between the authorities of the general and state governments on account of the Indians. See, the Indians were the problem. That was according to our government. They were the problems. We had to take care of that, It would place a dense and civilized population in large tracts of country now occupied by a few savage hunters. By opening the whole territory between Tennessee on the north and Louisiana on the south to the settlement of the whites, it will incalculably, anyway, it will calculate, strengthen the southwestern frontier and render the adjacent states strong enough to repel future invasions without remote aid. Now, it will relieve the whole state of Mississippi and the western part of Alabama of Indian occupancy and enable those states to advance rapidly in population, wealth, and power. It will separate the Indians from immediate contact with settlements of whites. But we can't have them too close to those white folks, because that's why y'all getting booted out. We do not want to have y'all near us. So we're going to take all your land and get y'all asses out of here so we can live comfortably with all the riches and natural resources that are there at our disposal. But we don't need y'all looking over our shoulder. We don't want y'all being around to watch us enjoy the spoils of our victory by getting rid of y'all and sending y'all to wherever. Okay. It's America at its finest. So it's going to free them from the power of the states, enable them to pursue happiness, okay, in their own way and under their own rude institutions. Will retard the progress of decay, which is lessening their numbers, and perhaps cause them gradually, under the protection of the government and through the influence of good counsels, to cast off their savage habits and become an interesting, civilized, and Christian community. Ain't that a bitch? So they basically saying these Indians are savage, got their buckskins on, they ain't got no guns or weapons to fight back adequately. So, they some arrow chuckers, and they're primitive. They need to be in their own little enclaves, their own little area operations, because we don't need those savages around us or near us. They might contaminate us white folks. So we're gonna give them a little plot of land, and maybe if they wake up, we can help them become civilized. See, because their lifestyle and their existence doesn't meet our standards. We don't think that they are worthy of being amongst us, but we could try to help them become good Christians one day. He continues, what good man would prefer a country covered with forests and ranged by a few thousand savages to our extensive republic, studded with cities, towns, and prosperous farms that y'all stole, uh, embellished with all the improvements which art can devise or industry execute, occupied by more than 12 million happy people, and filled with all the blessings of liberty, civilization, and religion. Good old-fashioned American takeover. Always apparent, always in style, never ever fails them to get the job done, but ultimately it never works. The present policy of the government is but a continuation of the same progressive change by a milder process. The tribes which occupy the countries now constituting the eastern states were annihilated or have melted away to make room for the whites. This is what he was saying. This was what I just said there was word for word, verbatim. The waves of population and civilization are rolling to the westward, and we now propose to acquire the countries occupied by the red men of the South and West by a fair exchange, and at the expense of the United States. That's where that benevolency comes in. We're going to send them to land where their existence may be prolonged and perhaps made perpetual. So in other words, if y'all don't get y'all asses out of here, you're going to be extinct. So keep on fucking around and find out, because we serious. We want this land. We taking this land, and now we got this land. You got it? You comprende this? Okay. Doubtless, it will be painful to leave the graves of their fathers. Actually, we don't give a fuck about their fathers and their graves, and we'll dig some more graves for y'all asses if y'all don't ever get the hell out of here. Okay. But what do they more? What do they more than our ancestors did, or than our children are now doing? To better their condition in an unknown land, our forefathers left all that was dear in earthly objects. Our children, by thousands of yearly, leave the land of their birth to seek new homes in distant regions. In other words, I guess translating what he just said in that paragraph is like we left a country or land over in Europe to come over here and occupy your crib. So we suffered too. We had to leave our children behind to come in and take over your land so we can bring our children over here to populate your land. You get it? You savvy, man? You savvy? He went further. Does humanity weep at these painful separations from everything, animate and inanimate, with which the young heart has become entwined? Now he wants to wax philosophically about the takeover of another people's land, trying to smooth it over a little bit so it won't sound so vicious in what they've done. Far from it, Jackson says. It is rather a source of joy that our country affords scope where our young population may range unconstrained in body or in mind, developing the power and facilities of man in their highest perfection. These remove hundreds and almost thousands of miles at their own expense, purchase the lands they occupy, and support themselves at their new homes from the moment of their arrival. Can it be cruel in this government when, by events which it cannot control, the Indian is made discontented in his ancient home, to purchase his lands, to give him a new and extensive territory, to pay the expense of his removal, and support him a year in his new abode? In other words, I guess Jackson was saying, we're gonna kick y'all out of y'all crib and send your ass out there in the wild, wild west. But we're gonna subsidize it and everything, and matter of fact, we're gonna be so nice to y'all and benevolent that we're gonna subsidize y'all existence for a full year, money back guarantee. We're gonna make sure that y'all comfortable. Where if you're uncomfortable, well, you'll figure it out because we're giving y'all all this land out there in the wilderness free. So what you bitching about? In our mind, it's a good deal. Now, how many thousands of our own people would gladly embrace the opportunity of removing to the West on such conditions? Again, great deal. I understand why you Indians have a problem with what we're proposing to you. Shit, you'll get over it. He said, if the offers made to the Indians were extended to them, they would be hailed with gratitude and joy. And is it supposed that the wandering savage has a stronger attachment to his home than the settled civilized Christian? Good question. If you understand what the question was all about, was he expecting an affirmative answer rather from the Indians' perspective? I don't think so. Or he says, is it more afflicting to him to leave the graves of his fathers than it is to our brothers and children? Rightly considered, the policy of the general government toward the red man is not only liberal, but generous. It's always a matter of perspective, right? Who's giving the orders and who's taking it? They kind of gave the Indians a no choice solution to the problem that they were facing. You either leave, you can leave voluntarily, or you can die involuntarily. That's how I see it. That's how it's being laid to them from my perspective. Okay. He says again, rightly considered, the policy of the general government toward the red man is not only liberal but generous. He is unwilling to submit to the laws of the states and mingle with their population. To save him from this alternative, or perhaps utter annihilation, hint, hint, see what the little dig was? If you don't accept this, you're going to get annihilated. So it's either move or die. Those are your two options. Take them or leave them. The general government kindly offers him, that him is the red man as they call him, a new home and proposes to pay the whole expense of his removal and settlement. Now, breaking that down in today's language and lingo, that's like, you want to move from, let's say, California to Missouri, and you call up two men in a truck, or some other Mayflower moving company, whatever moving companies are available today, and they are so benevolent and like the fact that you want to move, that they'll go ahead and move you, pack your stuff, get you going, relocate you at their expense because they appreciate you that much. That's kind of what the American government was telling the American Indian. You get your asses out of here, and you do it with a smile on your face, and what we'll do for you is we'll help you move, and while we got that boot in your crack and that rifle to your back, and we're gonna get you settled out there in the wilderness at our expense. What more could you want, Chief? Folks, I just want to share that information with y'all, to the people who don't know about our portion of our history, and that's just with American Indians. See, I ain't trying to talk about us black folks because a lot of people still don't know our story and ain't concerned about our story. And I understand that because everybody is not interested in the plight of other people. Hell, I don't know Asian history. And I don't know a lot about African history. I need to know more about it, and I will, good Lord willing. But my video today was just to illustrate and show people where we've been. Question is, right now, with Trump and his regime coming into office again, where are we going? I don't know. It don't look promising. But one thing I can guarantee you and assure you, we ain't gonna be like the Indians, because that was a whole different setup and a scenario in a different time. Uh, I know they trying to deport all those Latinos that voted for Trump, but they ain't got nowhere to send us no how. They ain't deporting black people nowhere, not to my knowledge. And if it did come to my attention, my only response to them on that tip is, man, fuck y'all. It ain't happening. So y'all can take that, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Folks, I wish all of y'all a happy afternoon. Enjoy yourself today. Again, this is Ron at RonsTalking. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'll be back with some more info. It might be this, it might be that. My boy Donald the Clown, he'll be back with me too. That's my sidekick. Now, I told people in my other videos, I've been keeping him under wraps for a while, and he got tired of just feeling like he just hanging around for nothing. And see, y'all understand, I ain't crazy, but I've been hearing voices and shit. He be talking to me, be bugging the hell out of me about letting people know who he is. So now you know. So there are times when if you think I'm going off the deep end, I got a contract with him. He got 49% of my company. So, I gotta treat him right. So anyway, you folks have a wonderful day and keep your eye on the prize, and don't let all this bullshit that Donald Trump is trying to perpetrate on us scare you to the point where you can't think straight, because he's full of a lot of hot air and a lot of other stuff that I ain't gonna say. But anyway, have a great day, and once again, as always, peace, love, and Ron is